The next primary tissue type is muscle tissue. Don't forget, muscle is its own tissue type. It is not a connective tissue. Muscle tissue provides movement. So movement of your body, movement of things, movement of fluids and things like that within your body. Muscle tissue is very cellular, very vascular, very metabolic. Okay, it utilizes a lot of ATP, glucose. Okay, it contains things called myofilaments. And the myofilaments are little proteins. One of them is called actin, and the other one is called myosin. And when those two proteins that are in the muscle tissue interact together, they create contraction. So these are the contractile fibers that allow for your muscles to move, muscles to shorten or contract. There are 3 types of muscle tissue. The first one is skeletal muscle. You can see that right here. And skeletal muscle, put that over here. Skeletal muscle looks like a bunch of like ropes. Okay, their cells are bundles of cells, and they look like fibers. So they're often called muscle fibers. So they look kind of like this, like tubes. And they run from where a muscle originates, so the origin, to where the other side of the muscle terminates, which is the insertion. And all of the muscles are bundled, all the cells are bundled together. So they're going to link together like this. And they're all going to run from origin to insertion. Skeletal muscle is voluntary. So these are going to be your muscles on your arms, on your legs, just any muscle that you can consciously control. That's what we mean by voluntary. Skeletal muscle cells are one of the few types of cells in the body that are multinucleate. And like I said, these cells, muscle cells, are full of these myofilaments or contractile proteins. And they're so full of them, I'll kind of fill them in here, that it pushes the nuclei to the periphery. So it pushes them to sort of the outside of the cell. I mean, it's not outside of the cell, it just pushes them out towards the plasma membrane. So you can see that here. All right, another thing about the fibers themselves is that they are striated. So kind of like striped. And that striated look is created by how those myofilaments, the contractile proteins are arranged. Okay, so on this picture here, these little lines are the myofilaments. Those are the striations. Okay, so those are the main characteristics of skeletal muscle. You can see it here. That's a skeletal muscle. There's a skeletal muscle. This is a slide of that, and these are the nuclei that are forced to the periphery of the cell. And then you can see sort of that it looks striped there. Okay, the next type of muscle is cardiac. And that, of course, is here. Cardiac muscle, this is muscle that is found in the heart, which might seem obvious. Okay, it is only in the walls of the heart. Okay, it's not, some people will look at the heart and then see the aorta coming off of that and think that that has cardiac muscle in it. It does not. The cardiac muscle is only in the walls of the heart, not in any of the vessels that come off the heart. The cells do not, the cells are similar to skeletal muscle cells, but then not. Cardiac muscle cells don't span the whole length of the heart like the skeletal muscles span the whole length of a muscle. They're cells that are connected. So they are uninucleate. So they have one nucleus, and they look a little bit, they're uninucleate, these cells are uninucleate. They're attached by these specialized attachments, I don't know what else to say, but they are linked together by these things called intercalated discs. And inside those discs are desmosomes, which keep the cells together when the heart is beating, and gap junctions. And it allows the cells to communicate with one another, shares their cytoplasm. So they look a little bit like this. And these cells are also branched. So I want you to note that. So they look a little bit like this. Trying to make this look sort of decent, but okay, my art isn't good. So anyway, these cells, this is what I mean, they're linked together, and they're linked together with these intercalated discs. That's what this is. And of course, inside of that is going to be desmosomes and gap junctions. They each have one nucleus, and it's kind of round and centralized like that. And they're branched. So you can see this one branches like that. This is branching. This is branching. And that helps to stabilize the muscle cells. Skeletal muscle cells tend to or can tear. And the branching of cardiac muscle cells helps to keep that from happening, because you certainly don't want your heart muscles to tear. These muscle cells are also striated. So up here, You can look, this is the cardiac muscle. This is a cell over here, and this is a cell linked together by an intercalated disc. Here's a disc, here's a disc, here's one. They're uninucleate. And on here, when you see the, side by side, you can see the skeletal muscle and the cardiac. The cardiac muscle is going to be kind of lighter in color, and you can really see those round nuclei, and that's a good way to be able to distinguish it, these round nuclei. It's also branched. All right, these cells do not branch. Okay, the last type of muscle tissue is called smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is not striated, but it does have myofilaments. They're just not arranged like they are in skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. They're uninucleate, and like cardiac muscle, which I didn't mention, but cardiac muscle and smooth muscle both are involuntary. Cardiac muscle is also involuntary. Involuntary just means you can't consciously control it. Okay? Smooth muscle is going to surround hollow organs. So like the stomach, that's a hollow organ. Blood vessels, those are hollow organs, and around those have smooth muscle. Okay, in vessels, it allows vessels to constrict. Stomach, it allows the stomach to be able to contract and churn and stir up food in your stomach. Smooth muscle cells look like spindles, like that, and they are uninucleate. And they make sheets. They link together to make these sheets. Make a couple here. So you can kind of see where I'm going here, but it's going to make a sheet of cells. They look kind of like squamous cells, but of course they're not. If you're looking at a slide and you're not sure, you think something looks squamous, you better look for an apical side and a basement membrane, because anything with smooth muscle is not going to have that. Okay, so it looks like that. You can see here in the slide, see how it looks kind of like squamous cells, and they do look like that, but the nuclei are a little bit bigger, and again, there's no apical side and no basement membrane here. Here's a cell. This is what it looks like here. All right, so those are the types of muscle tissue, and when we get to muscle, we'll talk way more about especially about skeletal muscle tissue, and then a little bit about smooth muscle tissue and how it works. And then next semester, when we talk about the heart, we'll talk way more about how cardiac muscle works. So the last thing we're going to talk about is neural tissue.